Hi, my friends. Today I want to present you a new story. Enjoy watching it.
Life has a way of blindsiding you when you least expect it. My name is April, and I'm a designer in the heart of the city. For 5 blissful years, I believed I had it all. A fulfilling career, a loving husband, Philip, and a bright future. Philip and I met at a gallery opening. His charm and passion for life matched mine, and before long, we were inseparable. Our wedding was a dream, a seaside ceremony with family and friends. Bella, my sister, was my maid of honor. Despite her troubled past, she was family, and I believed in second chances. But sometimes, the people you trust the most are the ones who can hurt you the deepest. It all started on a sunny Thursday afternoon. Philip was supposedly on a business trip, leaving me alone in our apartment. As I tidied up, I found his tablet on the kitchen counter, still logged into his email. A slew of notifications caught my eye, and curiosity got the better of me. My heart pounded as I opened the emails. What I found were explicit messages between Philip and Bella. The shock was paralyzing. My hands trembled as I read through their exchanges, each one more incriminating than the last. My mind raced with disbelief. "April, what are you doing?" I muttered to myself, but I couldn't stop reading. Philip had left his office at noon to meet Bella at a hotel downtown. They had been carrying on their affair for months, meeting whenever I thought he was working late or out of town. My stomach churned as I realized the extent of their deceit. That evening, I waited for Philip to return, my heart heavy with dread. When he walked through the door, I confronted him. "Philip, we need to talk," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Sure, what's up?" he replied, looking tired but unsuspecting. I handed him the tablet. "Explain this." His face went pale as he scanned the emails. "April, I can explain." "Explain what?" "That you've been sleeping with my sister. That you've been lying to me for months." My voice rose with each word. Philip looked down, shame written all over his face. "I never meant for this to happen. It just did. It just did." I echoed incredulously. "You betrayed me, Philip. You and Bella both." Tears filled my eyes, and I turned away, unable to look at him. "I want you out, now." As Philip packed his bags, I called Bella. "We need to talk, now." She arrived an hour later, her usual confident demeanor gone. "April, Don't," I interrupted. "How could you? You're my sister." Bella's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you." "Then why did you?" I demanded. "You knew how much I loved him." "It just happened," she repeated Philip's words. "We didn't plan it." I laughed bitterly. "Didn't plan it? You both betrayed me. You planned it every time you met behind my back." Bella looked down, unable to meet my gaze. "I know, and I'm sorry." "Sorry isn't enough," I said, my voice cold. "I want nothing to do with either of you." Bella's eyes hardened. "Well, you'd better get used to it. Philip and I are together now. You should just divorce him." "Is that why you came here? To gloat? To tell me to end my marriage, so you can have him?" My voice was filled with disbelief. Bella didn't respond, her silence confirming my suspicions. I felt a cold numbness settle over me as the reality sank in. My marriage was over. Philip left that night, and the next few days were a blur. I went through the motions at work, trying to maintain a facade of normalcy, but the betrayal gnawed at me, leaving me hollow. One day, I confided in Natalie, my closest coworker. "Natalie, can we talk?" She looked up from her desk, concern etched on her face. "Of course, April. What's wrong?" I told her everything. She listened, her expression shifting from shock to anger. "I can't believe they did this to you. You deserve so much better." "I don't know what to do," I admitted, tears spilling over. "My whole world has fallen apart." "We'll get through this together," Natalie said firmly. "You have me, and your parents. You're not alone." Her words were a lifeline. I realized I needed to lean on those who truly cared about me. My parents, too, were devastated by the news. Their support was unwavering, their anger at Bella and Philip palpable. "I can't believe she would do this to you," my mother said, her voice shaking. "And Philip, we trusted him." "We'll get through this, April," my father added. "You're strong, and we're here for you." Their words gave me strength. I realized I needed to take control of my life, to move forward despite the pain. The road ahead was uncertain, but I knew I wouldn't face it alone. The days following Philip's departure were a whirlwind of grief and disbelief. I tried to keep myself busy, burying myself in work, but the weight of the betrayal pressed down on me, making every task feel monumental. My friends and family urged me to take some time off, but I insisted I was fine, convincing no one but myself. One particularly difficult morning, I forced myself out of bed and into the shower. The hot water did little to wash away the numbness that had settled in my bones. I dressed mechanically, avoiding the mirror. I couldn't bear to see the haunted look in my own eyes. At the office, Natalie watched me with concern. "April, you look exhausted. Maybe you should go home and rest." I shook my head. "I can't. I need to keep busy." "You're pushing yourself too hard," she insisted. "Please, take a break. Talk to someone." "I'll be fine," I lied, avoiding her gaze. The day dragged on, each minute feeling like an hour. By afternoon, I was struggling to keep my eyes open. My head pounded, and I felt a gnawing pain in my stomach that wouldn't go away. I ignored it, focusing on the project in front of me. Around 3 o'clock, Natalie approached my desk. "April, can we talk in private?" I sighed, knowing I couldn't avoid her concern any longer. "Sure." We stepped into a small conference room. She closed the door behind us and turned to face me. "April, you're not okay. This isn't healthy. You're running yourself into the ground." I sank into a chair, feeling the weight of her words. "I don't know what else to do, Natalie. If I stop, I'll have to think about it. And I can't. I can't face it." She reached out and took my hand. "You don't have to face it alone. We're here for you. Let us help." Her kindness broke through the numbness, and I felt tears welling up. I just feel so lost. Everything I thought I knew, it's all gone. Natalie pulled me into a hug. "It's okay to feel that way, but you need to take care of yourself first. Please, go home and rest. We'll manage here without you for a while." I nodded, finally admitting to myself that I couldn't keep going like this. "Okay, I'll go home." As I gathered my things, Natalie called my parents to let them know I was coming. "She needs support right now," I heard her say. "Can you make sure she's not alone?" The drive home was a blur. I arrived to find my parents waiting for me. My mother enveloped me in a hug as soon as I walked through the door. "April, we're here for you. You don't have to go through this alone." "I know, Mom," I said, my voice cracking. "I'm just so tired." My father guided me to the living room. "Sit down and rest. We'll take care of everything else." I collapsed onto the couch, feeling the exhaustion seep into my bones. My mother brought me a cup of tea, and my father sat beside me, holding my hand. Their presence was a balm to my shattered heart. Days passed in a haze. I slept more than I was awake, my body and mind trying to heal from the trauma. My parents took turns staying with me, making sure I ate and drank, even when I had no appetite. One evening, as I sat on the porch with my father, he turned to me. "April, I know this is hard, but you will get through it. You're strong, and you have so many people who care about you." "I feel so broken," I admitted, tears streaming down my face. "How do I even begin to put the pieces back together?" "One day at a time," he said gently, "and we're here to help you with every step." His words gave me a glimmer of hope. I wasn't alone. I had a support system that loved me and would help me rebuild. But my recovery was far from linear. The betrayal had left deep scars, and there were days when the weight of it all felt unbearable. I found solace in small things, drawing in my sketchbook, taking walks with my mother, and talking to Natalie. One afternoon, while sitting in the garden, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Curiosity piqued, I opened it. April, it's Bella. Can we talk? Rage bubbled up inside me. How dare she reach out after everything she had done? I typed a furious reply. What do you want, Bella? Her response came quickly. I just want to explain. Please. I hesitated, then decided to give her a chance to speak. Fine. Meet me at the cafe on Main Street in an hour. When I arrived at the cafe, Bella was already there, looking nervous. She stood as I approached, but I ignored her outstretched hand and sat down. What do you want to explain? I demanded. Bella sighed, her eyes filling with tears. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to understand that I never meant to hurt you. You didn't mean to hurt me, I repeated incredulously. You had an affair with my husband, Bella. You destroyed my life. I know, she whispered, and I'm so sorry. Philip and I, it just happened. We were both feeling lost, and we found comfort in each other. I shook my head. That's not an excuse. You both made a choice. You both betrayed me. I know, she said again, and I'm paying for it. Philip and I, it's not what I thought it would be. We're fighting all the time, and he's not the person I thought he was. That's your problem, I snapped, not mine. Bella nodded, tears streaming down her face. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. I know it doesn't change anything, but I needed to say it. I stood up, feeling a strange sense of closure. I appreciate the apology, but it doesn't change what happened. I need to move on with my life. Bella watched me go, her expression one of regret and sorrow. As I walked away, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The pain was still there, but I was beginning to see a way forward. Back home, I found my mother waiting for me. How did it go? She asked. It was difficult, I admitted, but I think I needed to hear her apology. It doesn't fix anything, but it's a start. My mother hugged me tightly. You're stronger than you know, April, and we're here for you every step of the way. With their support, I knew I could face whatever came next. The road to healing would be long, but I was ready to take the first step. It had been several months since the collapse that led me back into my parents' care. I was slowly piecing my life back together, supported by my parents and Natalie. Then, one seemingly ordinary morning, a letter arrived that would shake my fragile peace. I was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping coffee, when my mother walked in with the mail. She flipped through the envelopes and suddenly paused, her face contorting with confusion and anger. April, you need to see this, she said, handing me a thick, ivory envelope. I took it from her and immediately recognized the handwriting on the front. It was Bella's. My hands trembled as I tore open the envelope and pulled out a pristine white card adorned with gold lettering. It was an invitation to Bella and Philip's wedding. I stared at the card, unable to believe the audacity. They can't be serious, I muttered. My father walked in, noticing our stunned faces. What's going on? I handed him the invitation, my mind racing. Bella and Philip are getting married, and they invited us. He read the invitation, his expression hardening. This is outrageous. After everything they put you through. Why would they invite us? I asked, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and disbelief. Do they really think we'd want to celebrate their betrayal? My mother placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. Maybe they're trying to provoke you, or maybe they're just that clueless. Either way, they'll get a piece of our mind. What do you mean? I asked, looking up at her. We're going to that wedding, my father said firmly. We need to confront them and show them that they can't just sweep their actions under the rug. The idea of facing Bella and Philip at their wedding filled me with dread, but a part of me also craves the confrontation. Are you sure? My mother nodded. Yes, April. We need to do this, for your sake and for ours. The weeks leading up to the wedding were tense. My parents and I planned our approach carefully, discussing how we would handle the situation. Natalie was supportive too, and promised to be there for me, either physically or emotionally, depending on what I needed. On the day of the wedding, I dressed in a simple but elegant dress, feeling a mix of anxiety and determination. My parents were equally somber, dressed in their best attire, ready for the confrontation. As we drove to the venue, my mother turned to me. "Remember, we're not going there to cause a scene for the sake of drama. We're going to show them that we won't be silenced by their betrayal." I nodded, feeling a bit more resolute. "I understand." When we arrived, the venue was already bustling with guests. I recognized some of Philip's family members and a few mutual friends. They greeted us politely, though their eyes held a mix of curiosity and sympathy. Bella and Philip stood at the entrance, welcoming guests. When they saw us, Bella's smile faltered slightly, while Philip looked as if he'd seen a ghost. "April," Bella said, her voice strained. "I'm glad you could make it." I stared at her, struggling to keep my composure. "I'm here to support my parents, that's all." Philip looked uncomfortable, but he forced a smile. "It's good to see you, April." "Is it?" I replied coldly, turning away before he could respond. Without waiting for a response, I walked past them, feeling their eyes on my back. Inside the hall, I took in the lavish decorations and the glittering chandeliers. It was clear that no expense had been spared. My parents and I found our assigned table near the front, close enough to the head table that we could see everything clearly. As we settled into our seats, my father leaned in. "Remember, we're here to make a point," he whispered. "Let's wait for the right moment." I nodded, trying to steady my nerves. The ceremony began soon after, with Bella and Philip exchanging vows that felt hollow to my ears. I watched them, my emotions a mix of anger, sadness, and a strange sense of detachment. The moment the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, my father stood up, clapping his hands together in a slow, deliberate manner. The room quieted, and all eyes turned towards us. "I'd like to say a few words," my father announced, his voice commanding attention. "As many of you know, this isn't just a wedding for us, it's a confrontation." A ripple of confusion spread through the crowd. Bella and Philip's smiles faded, replaced by looks of concern. My father continued, "Bella, Philip, you may recognize some of these gentlemen." He gestured towards the entrance, where a group of men stood, each with a look of grim determination. They began to make their way towards the front, the room buzzing with whispers and curious glances. Bella's face turned ashen. "What is this?" she stammered, her voice barely audible. "These are men you've wronged, Bella," my mother said, standing up beside my father. "Men you've borrowed money from and never repaid, men you've manipulated and mistreated." One of the men, a burly figure with a scar across his cheek, stepped forward. "Bella, you owe me $10,000. You promised to pay it back years ago. Where's my money?" Another man, slender with piercing blue eyes, added, "You ruined my business, Bella. You made promises you never intended to keep." Philip looked at Bella, his face a mask of disbelief. "Is this true?" Bella's eyes darted around, searching for an escape. I don't know what they're talking about. They're lying." My father shook his head. "Enough lies, Bella. It's time you faced the consequences of your actions." The room erupted into chaos as more men stepped forward, each with their own grievances. Guests watched in shock, their murmurs growing louder. One of the men, visibly shaking with anger, shouted, "You humiliated me in front of my family. You made me kneel and beg for forgiveness for something I didn't even do." Bella's face crumpled, and she turned to Philip, desperation in her eyes. "Philip, please, you have to believe me." Philip's expression hardened. "I trusted you, Bella, but now I see the truth." Seeing Philip's resolve weaken, Bella lashed out. "This is all April's doing. She's behind this." I stood up, my voice clear and unwavering. No, Bella, this is all you. Your actions have consequences, and it's time you face them. Philip looked at me, his eyes filled with regret. April, I held up a hand, stopping him. Save it, Philip. There's nothing you can say to make this right. The venue staff finally stepped in, trying to restore order. But the damage was done. The guests, once eager to celebrate, were now disillusioned and disgusted by the spectacle. As the chaos subsided, my parents and I walked out, leaving Bella and Philip to deal with the fallout. The weight of their actions was finally crashing down on them, and there was no escaping it. Outside in the cool evening air, my father turned to me. "Are you okay, April?" I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of closure. "I think I am. Thank you for standing by me." My mother hugged me tightly. "We'll always be here for you, April. Always." As we drove away from the venue, I felt a strange sense of peace. The confrontation had been messy, but necessary. Bella and Philip had been exposed, and now I could finally begin to move forward with my life, leaving their betrayal behind. The fallout from the wedding was swift and merciless. Bella and Philip's marriage, barely started, crumbled under the weight of their exposed deceit. I returned home with my parents, a sense of grim satisfaction settling over me. The days that followed were a blur of legal consultations and supportive phone calls. The morning after the wedding, my phone rang. It was Natalie. "April, how are you holding up?" she asked, her voice full of concern. "Better than I expected," I replied, looking around my parents' cozy living room. "It's been a whirlwind, but I'm glad it's over." Natalie sighed in relief. "Good. Just remember, we're all here for you. Let me know if you need anything." I thanked her and hung up, feeling a surge of gratitude for her unwavering support. My parents had already been in touch with a lawyer, and we were gathering the necessary evidence for the alimony case against Philip. One evening, as I was sifting through old emails and messages, my mother walked in with a cup of tea. "How's it going, sweetheart?" she asked, setting the cup down beside me. I sighed, leaning back in my chair. "It's a lot to go through, but it's necessary. I can't let them get away with this." She nodded, a fierce determination in her eyes. "That's the spirit. We're in this together." A few days later, we had our first meeting with the lawyer, Mr. Collins. He was a tall man with a calm demeanor, exuding confidence that put us at ease. "April, Mr. and Mrs. Dawson, I've reviewed the materials you provided," he began, adjusting his glasses. "We have a strong case for alimony based on Philip's infidelity. The evidence is compelling." I nodded, feeling a mix of relief and anticipation. "What's our next step?" "We'll file the claim and await their response," Mr. Collins explained. "Given the circumstances, it's likely they'll settle out of court to avoid further public embarrassment." As we left the office, I felt a sense of empowerment. We were taking action, and it felt good to reclaim some control over my life. A week later, Philip and Bella's lawyer contacted us, proposing a settlement. We reviewed the terms with Mr. Collins, who advised us to accept the offer. It was a substantial amount, enough to ensure I could start anew without financial worries. As the months passed, my life began to take on a new rhythm. My work as a designer flourished, and I found solace in the creative projects that demanded my attention. I threw myself into each new task, rediscovering the passion that had once driven me. It was during one such project that I met him, Michael, the intriguing man who would change everything. I was working on a high-profile interior design project for a new boutique hotel in the city. The project was ambitious, requiring collaboration with various architects, contractors, and suppliers. Michael was the lead architect, and our first meeting was purely professional. He walked into the conference room with a confident stride, carrying a large portfolio under his arm. His presence commanded attention, tall, with dark hair that framed a chiseled face and piercing blue eyes that seemed to see right through you. He extended his hand with a warm smile. April Dawson, right? I'm Michael Grant. It's a pleasure to finally meet you in person. Likewise, I replied, shaking his hand. His grip was firm, and I couldn't help but notice the spark of chemistry between us. Our initial meetings were all business. We discussed design concepts, timelines, and budgets. But as the weeks went on, our interactions grew more personal. During one late-night brainstorming session, as we pored over blueprints and sketches, Michael leaned back in his chair, his eyes twinkling with amusement. You know, I didn't expect to find someone so dedicated and passionate about their work. It's refreshing. I laughed, feeling a blush creep up my cheeks. Well, when you love what you do, it's not really work, is it? He nodded, his gaze lingering on me a moment longer than necessary. I couldn't agree more. As the project progressed, so did our relationship. We started having lunch together, then dinner. Our conversations flowed effortlessly, moving from work to our personal lives. I learned that Michael had recently moved to the city from Chicago, where he had worked on several renowned projects. He was passionate about architecture, but also had a love for art and travel. One evening, after a particularly long day, Michael suggested we grab a drink at a nearby bar. The atmosphere was cozy, with dim lighting and soft music playing in the background. We found a quiet corner and settled in. 2 successful collaborations, Michael said, raising his glass. 2 new beginnings, I added, clinking my glass with his. As the night wore on, the conversation turned more intimate. Michael opened up about his past relationships, and I found myself sharing more about my own tumultuous journey with Philip and Bella. I can't believe you went through all that, he said, shaking his head. You're incredibly strong, April. I shrugged, feeling a mix of vulnerability and pride. I had a lot of support from my family and friends. They helped me through the worst of it. Michael reached across the table, taking my hand in his. Well, if you ever need someone else in your corner, I'm here. The sincerity in his eyes made my heart flutter. Thank you, Michael. That means a lot. Our drinks turned into more drinks, and before I knew it, we were standing outside the bar, the cool night air brushing against our faces. Michael looked at me, a question in his eyes. Can I walk you home? I hesitated for a moment, then nodded. I'd like that. The walk was short, but filled with a palpable tension. When we reached my apartment building, we stood there, neither of us wanting the night to end. I had a great time tonight, I said, breaking the silence. Me too, Michael replied, his voice low. April, Before he could finish, I leaned in and kissed him. It was a bold move, but I had no regrets. The kiss was electric, filled with a passion that had been building for weeks. When we finally pulled apart, we were both breathless. Do you want to come up? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Michael nodded, his eyes dark with desire. Yes. From that night on, our relationship took on a new intensity. Our meetings became more frequent, and our time together more intimate. We explored the city, laughed over shared meals, and spent long nights wrapped in each other's arms. For the first time in a long while, I felt truly happy. Michael was everything I had been missing: kind, supportive, and passionate. He encouraged me to pursue my dreams and stood by me through the ups and downs. One evening, Michael turned to me, his expression serious. April, I know it's still early, but I want you to know that I'm all in. Whatever this is, I want to see where it goes. I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through me. Me too, Michael. Me too. With Michael by my side, I felt ready to embrace the future, leaving the pain of the past behind. Our torrid affair was just the beginning of a new chapter in my life, one filled with promise and the possibility of true happiness.